I am Lindsay Wood Jeffries, and I am hopeful. I am hopeful in spite of the fact that our country faces unprecedented and pernicious inequity, as mentioned by Larry Summers, and a growing racial disparity. I see challenges there, but I also see solutions, and I see so much reason for hope. And at the root of that hope is expanded learning. We, everyone in this room, our collective work is building unusual partners and bringing all three sectors to the table in ways that are opening up doors of opportunity for students who really need it the most. And we're making measurable impact on our students. Higher Achievement is just thrilled to be co-hosting this Expanded Learning Summit with Citizen Schools. It's been a wonderful experience partnering together, as well as with all of the extraordinary co-sponsors. It's been a real example of collective work, and it's a powerful group. And in celebration of our 40th anniversary, we at Higher Achievement are finding new ways to amplify the work that we're doing in 4 cities, DC, Baltimore, Richmond, and Pittsburgh, and to raise that collective voice. And with support from an extraordinary new I3 grant for the organization, we're deepening the work in those cities. And that endorsement from the Department of Ed is not only an endorsement for higher achievement, but it's an endorsement for this sector, the promise of expanded learning to impact in-school achievement in really powerful ways. In fact, just yesterday, the summit conveners received a letter from President Obama, and I am privileged to read it, so imagine me as the president. My mom would be very proud. I send greetings to all those attending the Expanded Learning Summit. Our nation's young dreamers and innovators deserve the chance to reach for their dreams, and it is our duty to unlock the potential within each of them. By harnessing the power of education, we can equip our country's daughters and sons with the tools to achieve their piece of the American promise. If our next generation is going to meet the challenges of this century, they will need more time in the classroom. When events like the Expanded Learning Summit bring together professionals working on the front lines of education to explore ways to better utilize educational time, they help ensure America's students have every opportunity to prepare for their futures and go as far as their hard work and talents will take them. As you gather in common purpose, I wish you all the best for a productive summit. So thank you, Mr. President. And with that, it is my pleasure, first and foremost, to actually thank the Higher Achievement team. Can I ask everybody who's related to Higher Achievement, staff, board, partners, mentors, to raise your hand? Former staff, we've got some of those. Thank you. A special shout out to Jackie, Rich, and Stephanie, who worked extraordinarily hard on this summit with Callie and Roxanne and Kelly. And I am just so grateful. Our Higher Achievement adds 100 extra school days, the equivalent of 100 extra school days per year, and it takes effort from these individuals and everyone in this room to make that possible. So now it is my privilege to introduce this Expanded Learning Middle School panel. We have a group of 5 all-stars here. So who remembers middle school? Raise your hand. Who wants to go back to middle school? Raise them high. Higher Achievement loves middle school, actually. I adore middle schoolers. And often, middle school gets a bad reputation because of all those hormones. And as a result, this critical transition time is too often overlooked and underinvested. And middle school, as a result, has the highest teacher turnover, the fewest grade-level certified teachers, and the lowest levels of federal investment in limited expanded learning supports. And in sum, the country's pipeline to college and career readiness has a giant leak in the grades 6 through 8. That's why we are here. We need to close that leak. And that leak is happening at a hugely pivotal time for young people. Its neurological development of middle school students is second only to early childhood in its significance. Students' brains are actually getting hardwired during those adolescent years. Middle schoolers are also helping themselves develop their self-identities, independent from their families during that time. And lastly, they're often experimenting with risky behaviors. That begins in middle school, and we need to wrap them with supports to keep them on track. To explore these and many other topics, it's my honor to introduce our extraordinary panelists, Claudia, Lee, Jeanne, Rachel, and Tracy. I'm going to ask them each to take a minute to give a quick description of who they are, how they contribute to this conversation, and their perspective on middle school. And then we have a lively discussion. So I'm going to start with Claudia.
Does this work now? Is it on? Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Claudia Demers, and I am a program officer at the Wallace Foundation, which is a national funder whose mission is to strengthen learning and enrichment for disadvantaged children. And we have a dual approach. We invest in individual grantees while simultaneously investing in developing and building knowledge for the field. Many of you know Wallace, and that we've invested for over 12 years in after-school system building work in 12 cities. And one of our first cities, Providence, was focused on middle school, and that's been replicated in up to, I think, about 37 cities at this point. Simultaneously, we have, for the past 5 years, invested in national leading providers in the expanded learning field, and that's after-school, summer, integrated support systems, and expanded learning day. And with that investment, we are seeking to rate a scale with quality, while also these are organizations like Higher Achievement and Citizen Schools that are committed to building knowledge for the field and committed to evidence, which is very important to our model. And I also come from a program background, where I worked for a long time with middle school students, teaching and directing programs, and fell in love with them. So I think that's part of the reason why I've come today to speak to you a little bit about my experience, although we all sort of looking out here to a group of friends who all speak the same language. So I'm excited to share with y'all.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lee Hart. I'm the executive director of High Jump. High Jump is Chicago all the way. So we're been in Chicago for 25 years. And our focus is to provide high-quality educational experience for young people with limited financial resources during those middle grade years so that they can reach their full potential academically. And so we focus on those students in the summer and then Saturdays, all during immediately following 6th grade year through 7th and 8th grade year, and help them with the really daunting high school choice process that is present in a lot of our cities around the country, and getting more so. So many choices for young people, and we help prepare them to make the best choice possible for the high school that's going to help propel them to fulfill their potential.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeanne Penn. I'm the instructional superintendent for the middle schools in DC Public Schools. So I was maybe the only person that raised their hand with the idea of going back to middle school, and that's actually not a joke. So at the end of this month, I'm going to take my annual vacation with my best friends from middle school. We spent a lot of time after school, either in, so I could go ahead and admit it, either in marching band or in the accelerated math program. So I don't, it's the first time anybody ever clapped for that. That takes me back to middle school. So the point is that it was those opportunities that actually changed the way that I socialized, that changed the way that I think academically. And I do think that, for me, that was a really formative stage, and that's what the research tells us what's happening with our kids in schools today. And so providing them with the structures that help them make those healthy relationships and have that really rigorous academic enrichment is something that is near and dear to me personally, and it's important for us in DCPS as we look at investing in arts and health, and when we look at investing in extended day, because what that allows us to do is, instead of creating it as an extra thing, it integrates it into the academic rigor, it integrates it into the holistic experience, and that's the only way that we're really going to bring students to be the citizens, to be the scholars that we want them to be, is by marrying all of that and not treating it as separate buckets that would be nice to have as an add-on. So we can dig into that more as we go on.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Sussman, and I work for Higher Achievement. And this is actually a perfect segue. I am the center director for our Kelly Miller site in Ward 7 here in DC. Kelly Miller is a DC public school. It's a public middle school. I know. I was about to introduce him. Principal Zaki is over there. Could you wave or stand up? Thank you. So 3 years ago when I started with Higher Achievement, we piloted our single school model at Kelly Miller Middle School. And so what that meant is that we decided to integrate the after-school hours, the after-school programming, the summer programming, and the school day in a much more holistic sense. And we've come a long way in the 3 years. Principal Zaki and Higher Achievement have a strong unified vision, and we've been able to offer strong supports for our scholars in that school.
Thank you so much. I'll round out the panel here. My name is Tracy Young, and I'm with the George W. Bush Institute. Yes, that George W. Bush. We actually are connected with the Library and Museum out of Dallas. And after the administration ended, not only do we have the Library and Museum, but President and Mrs. Bush actually started a policy institute focused on 6 different issues, one of which was education reform. And we started focusing on accountability and data and transparency in that work. But there were also 2 other issues that they were looking at, really that had not been part of their work in the administration. One of which was middle schools. And as I look out here, I see there's a lot of people working in the field, which is wonderful. But this was one of the places they really thought there's a ton of interest and a ton of focus on early childhood, ton of focus on college and career, and they really wanted to work in areas where there wasn't a lot of spotlight and focus. And so this was one of those places that we really worked in. As I hear from everybody that's actually working with students, I feel a little sad because we're a little bit removed as a policy institute. We actually work with strategies, trying to get those research-based strategies into teachers' hands that are actually proven strategies and move those in. But part of our gigantically enormous field guide that we're trying to whittle down for teachers, bite-sized pieces, one of those and a very important part is our extended learning time piece. So I'm very excited to talk about that today. Thank you very much. You actually probably need that back.
We're very collaborative up here. So our first question I actually want to direct to Claudia and Lee, which is how does expanded learning directly impact the critical middle school transition? And can you speak a little bit to the importance of adult relationships and hands-on learning?
Well, as we're learning more and more about the brain at this stage, youth at this age are highly vulnerable to stress, but also highly receptive to services and interventions. So expanded learning opportunities are vital at this point. They can be pivotal in transforming a child's trajectory. Their self-esteem is fluctuating. Some are risk takers, others aren't. I mean, there's incredible variation. And they crave connections to their peers and near peers, but also caring adults who can help them reflect and understand and interpret their reality. So that's safe space and that understanding, also just helping them navigate change, just very critically to make everything sort of transparent and understandable. One thing we are seeing a lot of is just the deliberate intentional practices of adults are very important. I think for a lot of us that might have started many, many years ago, we weren't speaking so much about intentional practices around connecting our activities and our actions to the outcomes, the intended outcomes that we're seeking for young people. It's providing young people with the strategies and tools to navigate these changes and interpret their feelings. And also in the expanded learning space where you actually do have more time, it's a great space to deal with non-cognitive strategies, what we're learning about growth mindset and approaches to the challenges that they're facing. So that's some of the reasons why we've invested so heartily in expanded learning space and in building systems to increase quality and access.
So at High Jump, we really unabashedly embrace the academic challenge and the social challenge aspect. That's something that we believe it's not to shy away from. The sorrow I feel when I hear Wendy Spencer talk about and remind us of the stat of how young people in high schools just don't feel challenged. I think that's a fundamental way that you show respect towards young people from all different backgrounds. And if we are not doing that, that is a disservice. So I think that is a really core aspect of high jump. In particular, we really focus on the academic challenge and the social setting challenge. So in our program, we recruit from all around the city of Chicago and bring those young people together. So there are many layers of complex social situations, people from a variety of different racial and ethnic backgrounds in a city as diverse as Chicago. Folks who are many different economic backgrounds are mixed in for them to experience. We have 4 layers of sort of social dynamics going on that are intentionally set up in that when you come to high jump, you develop eventually a powerful peer network, like what Jeanne was talking about. We hear that often from our alumni, that they have 3 to 4 people. They have their wedding parties are made up of young people that they knew in high jump. So that peer network, near peers, our alumni work as near peer mentors within our program. Then we have teachers, professional teachers from many different backgrounds, ages, different school settings. And then also the family dynamics, because I think the people who go the farthest in life, who come from backgrounds with limited financial means, are people who are bringing people along with them from all different aspects of life that they meet along the way. This is not a leaving behind, this is a bringing along and accumulating and gathering people who will help you be successful, and in turn, that you can help be successful. So that unabashed embrace of academic challenge and then social challenge, those are really critical, because we know about the learning in the brain is that young people's minds are just so on fire at that age, and they're asking, what's possible for me? Who am I? Where do I belong? And I think the beautiful thing about working with middle grade students is the rest of us and all of the people that we work with, the volunteers that we bring into their lives, the staff members we help train to have those intentional, direct conversations with them. It's so wonderful that at that age, the rest of us get a chance to have those positive influences. Hopefully positive, right? And that's something you always have to watch in the mirror. What are you modeling? And that's what's great about working with the middle graders in that time in their life, because as that sprouting of connections in their minds, you have to have powerful and positive relationships around that sprouting, because that's the emotional and social part of that makes those brain connections stronger. It makes those memories powerful. It makes it something that you can rely on when you face challenge in your life, because we know that our students will face those challenges. So I think the way we do it is really try to mix that academic, that social, the relationships at multiple tiers, because that combination is what's going to provide that strong cognitive and non-cognitive base that they can take with them to succeed at really tough situations as they grow older.
And Lee, in her wonderful description of the brain development, reminded me that we have a video to share. An extraordinary video from our friends at Task. Shout out to Saskia and her team. So if there is someone that's ready to queue up the video, please do so. It's 1 minute, and it's packed with really great information.
Second only to infancy, a person's most intensive period of brain development typically happens at around age 12, 6th grade. Remember puberty? At the same time their bodies are changing, kids' brains go into developmental overdrive, thickening the gray matter in the prefrontal cortex used for judgment, critical thinking, and self-control. When kids make art, or they build robots, or tackle stimulating academic and social challenges, their brains hardwire those neural connections. Neuroscientists call that sprouting. At the same time, the brain sheds the excess connections it doesn't use on a regular basis to make processing more efficient. Neuroscientists call that pruning. So if kids don't reinforce all those neural connections, they risk getting pruned. Moral of the story? If you're looking for the peak time to optimize a person's brain development, it's in middle school, 6th grade.
It's incredibly well done, so thank you. So I want to actually, we had a great discussion in our pre-conversation about what defines middle school, right? There are K-8 schools, there are 6-8 traditional middle schools, there are 6-12 schools, and there's some controversy on what is middle school. And so I want to ask Jeanne and Tracy to talk a little bit about what they see as middle school, and also if there's any research or what their experience has shown around the different campus structures and how that contributes to learning.
Is this on? Yep. Is that right? Okay. Wonderful. Great. Well, we, within our Middle School Matters, and that's actually the name of our program, our Middle School Matters program and field guide, we actually have it structured as 6 to 8, although our strategies actually will work no matter what your structure is. And so that's, it's really a little bit agnostic as to the structure, which I think is important, because I think if you have something, I was actually just in Chicago last week, and they were actually asking that question of, well, what do? We have K-8 schools, and we don't actually have middle schools in the traditional sense in other areas. And I basically said that's, these strategies still work because they actually are targeted at specific grades. So I think that's, to me, that's the important part, is are you targeting at, kind of like the video I was just talking about, are you targeting at 6th grade, are you targeting at 7th grade, are you catching students, kind of like we were talking about before, they either fall off that cliff or start that rise up the hill to success in high school and beyond, and that's really the focus of our program. It was interesting, I heard actually Wendy Spencer talk about the ABCs, and that's actually something, part of our program is focused on academics. The other part of the strategies are actually focused on Bob Balfont's and his ABC work with attendance, behavior, and course. And so I was kind of nice to, I sort of heard her say attendance and then behavior, and I thought the next thing's going to be course. And I thought that was very nice. But I think as long as you have those two sides of the same coin, I think it works.
So my perspective is a little bit more anecdotal in talking to, so in DCPS we have both K-8 schools and 6-8 schools, and the 6-8 schools are the cluster that I work with, and Principal Zaki is one of those principals. What I've heard anecdotally from my colleagues who run the two types of schools are that most of them either don't want to deal with what you get from high schoolers in terms of where their perspective is, and they're already grown as far as they're concerned, or they may have elected not to be in a school where from time to time you may be changing pants, accidents, tears, that type of thing. So in middle school, you find those are the only people who consider this the happy medium. And although that's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, the reality is that the challenge that some of the K-8 folks face is a question of scale. So when you're trying to decide, are we going to field a team? What's our assembly going to be about? Is it going to be a whole school experience that is somehow relevant for a 5-year-old and a 13-year-old? Or would you rather have a campus where it's 6 through 8 and you can just focus on that cohort? What I found is that the folks who are more comfortable with the K-8 structure are those who are running a larger school, because then what you have is the opportunity to create cohorts. Maybe you just have different separate assemblies for the grade levels. I mean, even I see Katie Lundgren here, the principal of Marie Reed Elementary School. Hi, Katie, which is one of my alma maters, as I call it, because I used to work there. We would sometimes even split the assembly for the lower elementary and the upper elementary. So you can see why some leaders and educators might want to focus on the 6 through 8 experience. The thing that we find in DCPS is in order to create that cohort and also economies of scale becomes a challenge, because our schools aren't that big. We've got Deal, which has 1,300 students. Kelly Miller's pretty big, it's around 600. But then you have schools, middle schools, 6 through 8, that are in the 200s or the 300s. And then if you're looking at a per pupil funding structure, it becomes challenging to get the really full extent. So DCPS has augmented that with, in most cases, a minimum of a full-time staff position and tens of thousands of dollars for enrichment activities, for travel, because that's the only way you're going to have a really robust and complete school experience. And in some cases, we're talking about 3 and 4 staff positions to make sure that every kid gets art, music, foreign language, because these are non-negotiables. You're not going to have a complete education without them. So if the school doesn't naturally supply that, so to speak, then we as a district recognize that we're going to have to put that in there. And then even before we made that decision, our strongest school leaders were reaching out to Higher Achievement Program, other community organizations, to make sure that we could extend what we're doing with our students.
So it's now my pleasure actually to take a pause from this panel because Mayor Muriel Bowser has arrived. Thank you so much, Mayor Bowser. It's really extraordinary to watch. I've been in Washington now for 15 years, and to watch how our schools and our city have evolved with choice and quality growing each year. And I'm particularly excited that right now our mayor, chancellor, and police chief, all strong women leaders. So let's give it up for them. So back to our panel. I want to ask a little bit about how you think programs, expanded learning programs, should differ for middle school students as compared to elementary and high school students, and how they should help students transition into, through, and out of middle school. I'm particularly interested in Rachel and Claudia's insights on that. So let's start with Rachel.
So one of the joys of my job is that I work with students who start the summer before 5th grade, and they continue with higher achievement all the way through the end of their 8th grade year. So we see students starting in elementary school, and we help transition them through the end of elementary school, through that really rocky start of middle school, all the way through their 8th grade year when they're prepared to go to high school. And many of us can really remember those middle school years, as we've attested to. And they're not always as beautiful as Jeanne's, right? They're rocky times, socially, emotionally, physically, even, and academically, of course. And every year has its own personality. When we look at our scholars, our 5th to 6th to 7th to 8th grade scholars, each year has its challenges, each year has its strengths, each grade has its personality. And what they have in our program and at Kelly Miller that helps them see that all the way through are the adults in their lives. They have relationships with staff, with mentors, that help see them through from, you know, those early moments where they're just stepping foot into Kelly Miller, just a big, scary middle school, and they haven't even entered the 5th grade. It's the summer before 5th grade, and that is a huge school, and they are a very small student, right? And they continue, and they see their first mentor in the after-school program that fall. Hopefully that mentor continues with them all the way through to the 8th grade. In some cases, that really does happen. And in other cases, they have a number of caring, nurturing adults who help them through those years and who help transition them. I think what all of our scholars need in those middle school years are predictable adults, adults who will be there for them, adults who make a commitment to a long-term relationship with the scholars. Adults set high expectations, right? So we know there are challenges in our scholars' lives. However, those expectations that we set are very high, and then we do everything possible to help them meet those expectations. We help them find their voice. So a scholar who starts out the summer before 5th grade, by the time I see them in the 6th even, 7th or 8th grade, they're a leader in their community. So they're taking advantage of opportunities in the program, at school, in their community. They're showing their voice, their leadership, their curiosity. They're showing critical thought. They're able to advocate for themselves. And that's something that they gain through the relationships they have in the community. People who push them, people who advocate for them. And as Mayor Bowser was speaking, she mentioned the Empowering Males of Color initiative. She said that we are starting to recruit volunteer mentors, and I'm happy to say that we've actually already recruited a number of mentors to work with young men and young women of color at our Ward 7 Center at Kelly Miller. And those mentors are making the commitment to bridge that gap here in DC. So we have at least 10 mentors who've signed up in the past maybe 3 weeks. And that number at Ward 7 is rising, and at all of our DCPS sites. So I'm really excited about the potential with that to make sure that there are strong, active adults in our scholars' lives.
Yeah, what's this on? One of the things I love about higher achievement and a lot of the other programs we fund is also that role of the ritual in the students' lives, is that there's that sense of belonging, the ritual, the identity that's formed there, which is so important. And yes, rigor, and in addition to that rigor, but we also, because of the cognitive changes, middle schools really benefit from those experiences, from active learning experiences. So not just in the classroom, but using the community as a learning laboratory, taking them out, those applied experiences. They want to connect to things they're curious. They want to connect to things that they consider useful and that they can relate to. I was visiting a program last summer, and the students were garrulous, to say the least, because you get a group of middle school students. I always ask to speak to the students. It's very hard to get them to stop talking because they're so eager to share their experiences. And they were just garrulous about the book Night by Elie Wiesel, that they were connecting so much as low-income students of color living in very difficult circumstances, connecting to the content of what it would be like to be in a concentration camp and go through that. So I think it's just very important to focus on content and the high quality, but things that they're going to relate to. We know a lot about voice and choice, giving them opportunities to select what they want to do, to test, to tinker, to explore, practice, and fail, but fail in a very safe environment, circumstances where there's an adult that will help them reflect upon that and propel them forward. And I want to go back to sort of that making it explicit. I always think about, now that I know so much, why didn't anybody tell me? Why didn't they tell me when I was a middle schooler, but also why didn't they tell me when I was starting out on the front lines and working with young people? Sometimes I'll just marvel at, oh my God, I did that 20 years ago. And even as starting out managing people, how much I needed guidance and support. So there's also a role for skilled staff. A lot of young people, and tweens in particular, when they're doing arts, for instance, really want trained professional artists. They don't want to do arts and crafts. They don't want to do that. So it has to be very distinct from what they had in elementary school. So again, guiding them through that whole process and also recognizing each stage of 6 being so extremely different from 8th grade. Knowing that sixth graders are transitioning, and that's great variation, but by 8th grade, they're really different little human beings. So that's just, some of the things I think we should keep in mind when building programs and also improving programs for middle schoolers.
Thank you, Claudia. I have 3 more questions, and I'm going to ask our panelists to ask in rapid fire so that we can have at least 10 minutes for the audience to ask questions. So the next one has to do with the opportunity gap. Larry Summers mentioned it. Robert Putnam has a new book, Our Kids, talking about the opportunity gap. And it exacerbates the inequities in our country and in education. And I'd love to hear just a quick vignette or a story or an example of what you've seen in the opportunity gaps. And I'm going to ask Rachel, Jeanne, and Claudia to speak to that. Very quickly.
Okay, very quickly. This is a challenge. Yeah. So, like Jeanne, I was in the band, not in the marching band, but the most important thing that anybody did for me was to put an instrument in my hand when I was in middle school. I have a student like this who plays the trumpet, and he's very excited about it, and he takes advantage of the band program at Kelly Miller. He plays his instrument all through the year, and when he goes to bed at night, he dreams about attending Duke Ellington School of the Arts, which is a public school here, high school here in DC. He's trying to get his grades up, and the obvious answer would be, you need to practice. Practice every night, practice all through the summer. He just doesn't own an instrument. Right? So when I was growing up, when I got to that point where I was serious, my parents bought me an instrument. We can't find one for him. His parents can't afford that. That right there is the opportunity that he lacks that is going to help him succeed so that he can get where he wants to go. He has all the academics and all the support in school that's possible, but he needs additional opportunities outside of school. He needs that playing field to be leveled so that he can go where it is he wants to go, so he can achieve his dreams and go to Duke Ellington for high school.
Okay. So one of the things that we talk about when we're working with the children in the research that we've mentioned is the socialization. Having that adult relationship is extremely important, but they don't think so. They're worried about their peers and what the person next to them is thinking. So part of what happens for a lot of students in certain pockets, especially if their parents come from more means and give them more opportunities, is they learn how to navigate different social situations. So my 12-year-old son has been to events like this. He shook hands with a couple of ambassadors last summer. So he's learning how to navigate that. And when he goes to college and when he goes beyond that, he'll have had that conversation before. And students in other parts of town or from other backgrounds might not have that opportunity. So some of the things that we do, I just got an email yesterday, the kids from Susa, which is not too far from Kelly Miller, all the way on the other side of the river, so to speak, just landed in Panama. It used to be just that the kids from Deal were going somewhere, or just that the kids from that part of town were going somewhere. So we want to make sure that we are replicating those experiences, again, not as an add-on. This is education. This is how you raise and educate the whole child.
I don't like this quickly business, but one of the things, I think it's just also what is happening in the school day. I'll just go back to that in terms of the experiences and the active learning. It's, not just drill and kill, but really making learning exciting. Learning is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week process, taking the children out so that they're learning science outdoors by the river, doing biodiversity sampling, not out of a textbook. Every time I ask, a 7th grader if they like science, they don't. They shake their head that they don't, because it's coming for the most part in many of these schools from a textbook. So really getting out of those walls and breaking free of it. I think that's what middle class and affluent students are getting on a regular basis, beyond the experiences and all of the opportunities to explore arts and decide they don't want to do violin and they want to do this. They are also getting a different type of instruction in the classroom, and just want to for us to consider just different ways of teaching, connecting with elders in the community and learning in different ways.
You did a great job on the rapid fire. I asked one of my funders to speak quickly. So next is, what lessons have you learned the hard way working with middle school students? And I'm going to direct that to Lee and Rachel as our folks working directly in the field.
Thank you. I have two. One is that young people are not going to ask directly for challenge. Yeah, they're not going to ask for that. So I think that is a really key part. So you've got to come with the challenge and the support, high expectations, high support level, and you have to really think as an educator, as a leader, about that. So I think that's a key thing. You got to bring and then recognize potential and then make the most out of it that you can. So I think that was something that I definitely learned the hard way. People are not going to ask for that. So you have to build something where it makes them want it and quest it, and the hunger gets built from inside and challenged in positive ways. The second thing that I learned the hard way is working with middle graders, you really need to embrace their focus on the future and the present. That's all they care about. The present and the future and the present. So really building everything around making meaning, helping them make meaning out of what they're experiencing and how that affects their future. So those are the two things. They're not retrospective, reflective kind of people, right? It's not where they are in life. So really focusing on the future and the present. Two lessons.
So Principal Zaki and I were having a conversation the other day about the accelerated program at Kelly Miller and about higher achievements work as well. And the discussion was around the rate of change. Change is incremental. We put in a lot of effort. We have a community of support around our scholars all the way through their middle school years, but we may not see the results of that until later on in their middle school years, in high school, sometimes in college. I know that I started teaching many years ago. And my students are in college or graduating from college, and now I'm starting to get the messages. Here's what I did with my life. Thank you so much for that lesson you taught me when I was in the 7th grade. I've put that into place now as a 23-year-old. And sometimes when we're on the ground, when we are faced with challenges every day, it's hard to see the big picture. It's hard to see that at the end of the year, or at the end of 3 years, or 10 years down the road, this is the effect of your actions on this one child or on this group of children. But there is an effect, right? And the work that we do every day is incredibly important. And it's incredibly important to our scholars and to our students, even if they're not able to identify that and say thank you on a daily basis. Later on, 5, 10 years, you'll get a message on Facebook, you'll get an email, you'll get a phone call, and you'll understand the value and the worth of all the work you did for each student.
I'm going to ask one last question and direct it just to Tracy, because she hasn't gotten a chance to talk lately, and then we'll open it up. Imagine that you're talking to a new site director or middle school teacher. What is one piece of advice you'd share?
I'm not sure I can have that just one piece of advice. I think the alignment between what is happening during the school day to what is happening in the extended time, I think is so key. And I think that I'll expand just a little bit on that. But I think the not only making sure that you're connecting with what needs to happen, whether it's things that are deadlines that students need to meet. And academic pieces, if it's social, if it's just those sorts of connections, but also the making things engaging. So kind of what Claudia was talking about with, do you like science? Well, if you're doing something in an after-school setting or extended learning setting that is actually getting those students engaged and excited and understanding, oh, science is creating an app, or math is used in architecture. We were talking about that with my Spark friend earlier today when we were driving in. So I think really having those connections and then making sure that is translated back and forth, I think is so key for creating more time for these students in school.
Great, thank you. So I hope we have some questions in the audience. Raise your hand, and we have someone coming around with a microphone. Maybe I did a really good job asking the panel questions. I know we see someone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Saskia Trail from Task. So you were all talking about sort of positive school climate and the ways in which expanded learning can kind of help create that. And yet at the same time, we're sort of looking at behavior policies that change around the middle grades and that are often not aligned with adolescent development. So I'm wondering if any of you could talk about sort of the ways in which expanded learning partners may be able to help temper the effects of those behavior policies and kind of build a school climate that's sort of more in line with adolescent learning.
Okay, so I wanted to clarify something I said earlier, and that question gives me the opportunity to do that. So, I jumped to this trip to Panama, right? Really cool experience. But part of the challenge that we face when we're talking about socialization and what the adults need to do with the children is that is not part of our curriculum. And by that I mean socialization, teaching citizenship in an explicit way. And we don't necessarily have time for a class, but when you pair up with a program like Higher Achievement, and I've had the opportunity to do that in more than one school where I've worked, it gets you thinking about something beyond the curriculum. It gets you thinking about the value systems, the mission statement that organization has, and how that aligns to the other things that we know are very important to teach. So the reason I'm saying this in response to your question about behavior policy is that behavior policy is by its nature reactionary. It tells us what to do when the kid makes a mistake. We don't have enough invested, and this is something we're working on. Mr. Zaki does a lot, Katie does a lot with something like Responsive Classroom, programs like Restorative Justice. Stuart Hobson has developmental designs as the curriculum for their advisory, so that teachers are learning how to discuss this part of growing up with children. And then it becomes integrated into all of our conversations about decision making. It becomes integrated into the routines about how we enter the classroom, how we greet each other, how we resolve conflicts. So my answer to that is you can tweak the discipline policy and say, oh, we're not going to do zero tolerance, or we're going to reduce these numbers, or the number of days that a kid has to go, and we'll work on that, definitely, because it's a problem. But if we don't address this more root cause, then we're just going to be reacting to bad decisions. And that's just inevitable with middle schoolers. So we've got to help them make better decisions.
I've learned standing up is better than raising my hand. My name is Darla Marburger, and I'm happy to be a higher achievement mentor. And noticed when I started off this year, I had a really great group of kids, and unfortunately, I've had 3 of my 4 go. And that, when I look at that and think about how did that happen and why, I think about parental involvement and the key of getting parental support for these students as well. And so my question to the panel is, we can work a lot with the kids, and it's so important to do that because we have access to them, right? But how do we engage parents to see the value of the extended learning experiences that we're offering to their children so that they can really do their part in supporting their child and being a full participant and being there and sticking through it and working on the ABCs as well?
I'd like to respond to that. Just yesterday, I was talking with one of our alum, Kelvin Sherman, who I hope you all stay till the end because he's on the panel at the end. And he was talking about the importance of his mom. He grew up in a rough neighborhood in DC, and he said that he's seen most of the kids around him, a lot too many of the children around him now, actually die or be killed or be dead internally because of drugs. And he is incredibly committed, and so is his mother. And his mother got him into higher achievement during that time where there was lots of influence around him that could have led him down the wrong path. And at the same time, he said, some of my friends had moms or other parental figures who were trying to get them on the right path, but the child was overly influenced by the environment, and even that dedicated parent couldn't get them to the finish line. And so I think it's a combination of that deep parental involvement. The parent networks, I think, are incredibly important. So it's not, a staff member for an expanded learning program or necessarily a teacher in school, but parent-to-parent engagement and making it very goal-oriented. I think we always often default to the PTA model and the come once and hear about everything that's going on in the school, when actually, and the Flamboyant Foundation, I don't know if anyone's here from that, in Washington is doing a lot of research on this and direct investment on parental engagement. But they've found that the individual goal setting for their child, so parents will actually take the time out of their incredibly stressful, busy schedules to come in if there's going to be one-on-one attention given to them helping coach their child to the next step. And so I think that research is incredibly important.
Yeah, I just agree with Lindsay. I think everyone out here who's involved with extended learning or out of school time, this is one of our sweet spots. School people have tons of other pressures and other systems bearing down on them. We need to embrace the openness of our area of expertise and really build those parental networks, embrace that we don't have direct authority over kids and families in a lot of cases. We can really be coaches, supporters, mentors, advocates, and builders of networks. There's tons of power and knowledge in the communities and in parental and in parents, and we need to be people who can help bring that out. I think that's something that Mr. Summers brought up that is really critical. That is not something that we have to do ourselves, but we can really help empower folks for that. And I think that's something that if you're not embracing and you're not figuring out how to do in your own city, in your own community, I would challenge you to do that.
So I have been told that we are out of time, and we need a break before our next session. I know our next session is supposed to start at 11, but we might make it a little, maybe 11:05, and maybe Rich is going to help us with that. Thank you to this extraordinary panel.
Thank you, Lindsay. My name is Rich Trent. I'm the manager of Program Quality and Evaluation with Higher Achievement. I started with higher achievement back in 2010, right out of college. As a math teacher in our summer academy, then was a center aide for a few months in after-school academy, center director, ultimately with the Alexandria Center, Achievement Center, and now as the manager of program quality in our national office. We've been talking a lot about how expanded learning, we're investing in young people in the middle school age, but we could also probably run a whole nother summit on how expanded learning opportunities are investing in the energy and the professional development of young people who like working with young people. But for just the sake of Callie's sanity and everybody else that planned this summit, we will not plan another summit for that right now. But I do want to, I'm the manager of program quality with higher achievement. Today I'm your MC. I've been reviewing old recordings of James Earl Jones and Morgan Freeman to prepare for this role, and I will not let you down. So I want to share a few logistical housekeeping details just to make sure that everything runs smoothly today. So today's event will take place here in the pavilion room on the second floor and in 2 breakout rooms called Horizon A and Horizon B on the ground floor. An additional breakout session will remain here in the pavilion room, okay? Restrooms are accessible over by the registration table that many of you guys saw on your way in here. Or you'll pass others on the way downstairs to the Horizon A and B rooms. You can find the location of breakout sessions in your program or on slides up here as we begin to disperse. We have a packed program today, so I encourage you to move swiftly. It's about 11 o'clock right now. We'll probably get started promptly at 11:05 at our breakout sessions. So move swiftly. When you leave the pavilion room for other sessions, please bring your belongings with you as you enter these spaces, and event staff will be refreshing tables after each session. So during breakfast, you guys might have perused some of the convening partner booths out here. We hope that you continue to do that as the summit continues and learn about the innovative, important work that many of these organizations are doing. There is Wi-Fi available. I know a lot of you guys are wondering about the Wi-Fi situation. The network is Summit 15, and the password is 421. And lastly, the Twittersphere demands your reflections. It demands your thoughts on today's summit. So please share your summit experience on Twitter with your networks. #ExpandedLearning2015. That's with a capital E and a capital L. Is it expand? Ooh, well, I was about to ruin the whole thing, wasn't I? #ExpandLearning. Excuse me. ExpandLearning2015. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes for this transition. Onward.